Welcome back. So musician and producer Jay-Z has been accused in a lawsuit of raping a 13-year-old alongside hip-hop star Sean Diddy Combs. The accuser, who's not identified in the legal action, claims the assault took place at an after-party. This is following the year 2000 MTV Awards. Now, we are joined by Reputation First Managing Director Tshepo Matseba to really talk to us about what we learn from this matter that's unfolding in the US, particularly around reputation protection for high-profile individuals. Tshepo, good evening to you. Thank you so much for joining us. It really is one of those stories that has the world captivated. You've got, of course, Sean Diddy Combs, who sits inside custody, awaiting his trial in May 2025. So many questions around the sort of conditions that this hip-hop mogul may be experiencing. And then enter the charges against Jay-Z. Were you surprised? I think let's start there.
Oh, no. I was not surprised. Personally, I mean, I've been observing the story both locally and internationally. And what we know is that there is a pattern of events that took place at a certain celebrities event. You can call him by formal name, but Diddy's parties are known for a disaster. And unfortunately, Jay-Z is associated naturally because of their friendship, their connectivity, their consistent working together, visuals, everything. It's impossible to separate them, those two brands, from together. So the funny part is, so Jay-Z sits on this other side and just watches the other young men or male men going down alone. It tells you a story that people are willing to do everything and anything to protect themselves and protect their own names.
Yeah, very interesting. I mean, you talk about the brands, right? These are big global brands. I think immediately about the careers that have certainly sprouted from the work that have been done by Sean Diddy Combs and Sean Jay-Z Carter. Massive brands. Talk to me about what this does to public perceptions around the entertainment industry, and certainly not just in the US, but globally.
I think, let's start here at home. South Africa, I think the entertainment industry has its own difficulties. Usually it's financial difficulties that people can't afford to sustain themselves. And when they do wrong things, they are actually trying to uplift themselves. But when you go to an environment like the US, the entertainment industry is so brazenly empowering in terms of the image of fake life to a point where people are willing to put money in the wrong behavior, in the wrong activities, in the wrong, probably the worst activities. And that's what you see happening here with Jay-Z. By the way, if you look at the narrative, and it's not my words, but the narrative in the US, they're also implicating singer, beautiful singer Beyonce, because character B is actually implicated as, and that's the social media narrative, not my words. And we should talk about that because that's part of the narrative. And leaving it without discussing it means that we are trying to actually protect people we think we admire the most. Because, I mean, you look at Jay-Z, Jay-Z is a powerful musician, very inspirational, very smart. We love his tunes. And for us to not talk about this in a way that's open and direct means that it sounds like we're obsessed to a point where we don't want to see the potential reality. And I use the word potential, and other people here in South Africa will say allegedly. But the reality here is that there are significant problems in the US specifically. And I don't think it's just the US. I mean, I think if you go to the UK or Europe, parts of Europe, you'll bump into all these problems where significantly important people, inverted commas, would actually get away with murder. Get away, and when I say murder, not literal, but they will get away with things because they are perceived as significant others. And in that moment, those of us and those others around us who are so-called ordinary people have to admire these people, but don't realize the reality that these people live every single day.
Yeah.
And the Jay-Z matter, for me, demonstrates what partly happens in South Africa if you look at some of the court cases around pastors who used very little girls, 15-year-olds, 16-year-olds, and abused them for sexual favors.
You know, of course, Diddy has responded to the allegations. I mean, going as far as to say that the allegations are idiotic and heinous. And I immediately start to think about, you know, whether or not a reputation really can be saved. And I think that that's something for all of us to really think about, right? Actions and how your reputation certainly can be hurt by actions. And if there's a way to turn that narrative, that public perception that you've talked about around.
Well, if you have capital and resources, money, you might actually get away with some of the things. But unfortunately for Jay-Z, there's too much attachment to someone who's already going in the downward spiral. And that's going to hurt his name for a long, long time. And unfortunately, the worst part is that it's going to affect an artist called Beyonce, because they've all been hanging around together. The fact that you and I and others might think that Beyonce is a beautiful artist, beautiful talent, and that Diddy, beautiful talent, and that what was the other guy's name?
Jay-Z.
All of them, Jay-Z, talented people, very talented people. You will see that in South Africa we've seen events where very smart artists make the worst decisions, worst moments. And that's because these are human beings. But worse is that there are people who are sick. And I think that at some point there are brands that are sick that should not be tolerated. It's just that in the popular culture, people will support sick brands because those sick brands actually resemble societal problems in a particular country and context.
Yeah, I think we can't have this discussion, Tshepo, without talking about potential victims here, right, or alleged victims, if you will. Because what you've got, for instance, is a lawyer in the US who says that he's willing to represent, this is Tony Busby, willing to represent close to 300 potential cases against Diddy. And of course, this issue coming out with that suit that was filed by the former partner of Diddy, Cassie. But there is certainly a question around, with more and more charges, with each charge, it encourages others then to come out.
Yeah, the reality is that there is a phenomena of truth-telling. And, you know, truth-telling is a consistent pattern. Someone is going to come out and they all come out. And all our friends come out. And the reality that's going to happen is this, that more truth is going to come out. Unfortunately, the truth doesn't come with money. These people that we're talking about have got access to resources, strength, power, and they don't care actually about the opinions of victims. But in at least in the world of public opinion, especially in the US, there are instruments, there are movements that are collectively working hard to protect victims from barbaric behavior of masculinity, of abuse. And, you know, I talk about masculinity with respect because I'm a man myself. But I say so because we know and we can see that there are men who are more powerful than others, more powerful than other human beings, who believe that actually they hold the ticket to society, and so they have the power to emboss themselves into other people's lives without their consent, or at least a degree of respect. And I think that in South Africa, at least there are lessons for us to watch what's happening in the US and say, well, how do we protect our children from this barbaric behavior, because it has happened here with a certain particular pastor from, is it Nigeria or so, that actually had a lot of little girls around himself. And I think that there's something that we can learn here. And the fact that you and I are not victims at the moment is irrelevant. I think what we need to do is to figure out how do we bring the victims out so that they can speak for themselves.
Yeah. Tshepo, thank you so much for that. A moment to reflect on what we learn from those, of course, occurrences there with Sean Jay-Z Carter, as well as Sean Diddy Combs, facing very serious charges. Tshepo Matseba, their Reputation First group, giving us a moment to reflect on that issue.